picture this, right? You abolish the government today.
Oh, total clean slate.
Exactly. You wipe out every tax code, fire every petty official, burn the DMV to the ground, and just move to an untouched, infinitely vast wilderness.
Sounds pretty appealing to a lot of people, honestly.
Right. But according to the political theory we're diving into today, within exactly 150 years, you will accidentally rebuild the exact same suffocating bureaucratic machine you were trying to escape.
It's basically an inescapable loop.
It really is. Welcome to the Deep Dive. For you, our listener, today's mission is to explore the absolute origins of red tape. We're unpacking this deeply provocative essay that, diagnoses our modern bureaucratic nightmares and runs this fascinating thought experiment to test the libertarian ideal of a completely stateless society.
It's a remarkable piece of synthesis. I mean, the author is pulling from sociology, economics, and historical patterns to diagnose why we feel so constantly trapped by these administrative systems.
And whether a truly rule-free society is actually sustainable or just like an economic mirage.
Exactly.
And before we jump into the deep end, I do want to make something crystal clear to you, the listener. The source material we're unpacking today contains some pretty politically charged content.
Yeah, specifically critiquing libertarianism and dissecting state structures.
Right. And we are strictly neutral guides here. We aren't taking sides or endorsing these viewpoints. We're simply impartially reporting and unpacking the intriguing arguments laid out by the original author. So you can weigh them for yourself.
Our goal is really just to analyze the mechanics of the author's argument to understand how they construct this idea that the state is inevitable.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before the author gets into the grand theoretical solutions, they spend time validating a very specific universal misery.
Oh, the waiting room frustration.
Yes. You are holding ticket number 84, the fluorescent lights are buzzing, and you are just trapped in this maze of paperwork to accomplish something incredibly mundane.
We've all been there.
Interestingly, the author explicitly notes that they actually agree with young libertarians on the current state of things.
Yep.
Like, the baseline miseries of our modern era are undeniable.
Sky-high tax rates, massive public employment bloat, agonizing slowness.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, the author pulls no punches here regarding the current system. They place the blame squarely on the shoulders of what they call unvisionary managers and mid-level bureaucrats.
Unvisionary, that's a great word for it.
Right. According to the text, these administrative classes are actively driving countries toward disaster. The core argument is that the educational levels and, the visionary capacities of these ruling classes are steadily declining.
Leaving us with operators who only know how to maintain the friction rather than actually streamline the engine.
Precisely.
And the essay lists these really specific grievances that illustrate how unaccountable that friction has become. I mean, we aren't just talking about long lines here. We're talking about having to navigate convoluted, multi-layered legal processes for the absolute simplest tasks.
Or the state taxing the tiniest, most insignificant financial transactions simply because, it has the digital capability to do it.
Yeah, because they can.
Consider the mechanism behind one of the most insidious examples they mention, governments secretly adding interest to your unpaid taxes without actually notifying you.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then they just eventually drop this incredibly inflated bill on your doorstep. The author points out this isn't an administrative error. It operates as a feature of a massive, invisible machinery that puts the citizen in a completely helpless position.
It strips away any sense of fair play. And then you add the human element on top of it. The text highlights the sheer arrogance of petty bureaucrats who use their tiny slivers of power to just demand obedience.
Like a power trip.
Exactly. They send a clear, unwritten message. If you don't submit to their specific interpretation of the rules, they have the leverage to completely freeze your life. If I had to put a framework around it, the author's describing artificial bureaucratic bloat almost like an autoimmune disease.
Oh,
Yeah, like the state naturally creates a system to defend the body of society, but eventually it gets confused and starts attacking the very citizens it was meant to protect.
That is an excellent way to frame it, actually, particularly because it leads directly into the author's next major premise, separating the natural immune system from the disease itself. The author argues that bureaucracy, fundamentally, is a completely natural structure. It's not just some 21st century glitch.
So it's basically baked into the DNA of civilization itself.
Completely. The text states that bureaucracy naturally emerges wherever humans gather in large numbers, and by its very nature, it operates slowly,
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and the author points out you don't even need hard sociological data to prove this. If you look at the classic literature of almost any country over the last few centuries, you'll find massive, slow-moving bureaucratic machines heavily featured as a central antagonist of daily life.
Think of Dickens, right?
Yeah.
Or Kafka. But if it's natural, we really have to look at the mechanics. Like, what naturally makes it so agonizingly slow?
Well, what's fascinating here is the text divides the root causes of bureaucracy into two distinct categories, natural and artificial.
Okay.
The natural causes of slowness are basically the unavoidable logistics of human existence on a large scale. The first one is just population growth. As a population expands, you simply need more coordination. The second is imbalances in geographic distribution.
Let's test that logic a bit. How does geography physically breed bureaucracy?
Okay, imagine a population naturally clustering near a fertile river basin, right? While a smaller group spreads out into the arid inland areas.
Got it.
Suddenly, you have a geographic imbalance. To survive, you need a mechanism to distribute agricultural resources from the river to the inland areas.
Which means transportation.
Exactly. That physical movement requires logistics managers. You need roads, which requires tax collectors to fund the paving of those roads.
And because humans are involved, you probably need auditors to watch the tax collectors.
You hit the nail on the head. The sheer physical geography of the landscape necessitates layers of administration.
That makes complete sense. The logistics build the ledger, and the ledger builds the office.
Furthermore, the author points to economic growth, like an increase in the volume of goods and services requires standardized monetary policies so merchants can actually trust each other.
Right.
And finally, you have inherently complex sectors that every society needs to function: health, security, and education. Coordinating a hospital network with an education system and a physical security force, it creates a naturally slow, heavy system simply because of the friction of communication.
But the author makes a crucial distinction here, don't they? Like, if we are only dealing with those natural logistical hurdles, the geography, the monetary policy, the hospitals, we shouldn't be trapped in a total nightmare.
Right. The author argues that if a society only had to manage natural complexities, the bureaucracy could actually be optimized. You could engineer it for speed and efficiency.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, historically, there have been periods where these natural systems ran relatively smoothly.
So what injects the autoimmune disease?
Right.
What turns the necessary logistics network into the agonizing red tape we experience today?
The artificial causes. The author identifies these as political and economic reforms, wars, and civil wars.
So human chaos.
Basically, internal political strife is a massive generator of bloat. Then you have external factors like global inflation. When these artificial, chaotic elements are injected into a country, the natural administrative system panics.
It tries to compensate.
Exactly. It tries to digest the chaos by creating emergency rules, temporary agencies, new layers of compliance. But those temporary layers, they rarely go away.
They just become permanent fixtures.
Yes. The natural system breaks down under the weight of artificial trauma, resulting in hopeless bloat.
So if artificial politics, wars, and inflation are the toxic elements that ruin the system, it naturally begs the question, what if we just hit the reset button?
Start over from scratch.
Right. What if we stripped all of that away? And this is where the essay introduces a really wild thought experiment. The author creates this theoretical blank slate called the Republic of X.
Though they even include a little joke in the text, apologizing to libertarians who might have preferred to call it a kingdom.
Which is pretty funny.
The parameters of the Republic of X are highly specific to test this exact theory. We're asked to imagine a completely isolated, untouched landmass. It has never experienced a war or a civil war.
No baggage.
None. It operates entirely outside the ecosystem of global inflation. It is perfectly insulated from every artificial cause of bureaucratic bloat. And, to prevent the thought experiment from getting tangled in historical complexities, specifically the colonization of the U.S., the author explicitly states there is no native population to displace and there are no competing global powers trying to colonize it.
So it is a true vacuum.
Yeah.
A pure economic playground. So the experiment begins. Hundreds of thousands of eager people rush into this untouched Republic of X.
Just looking to build a new life.
Yeah. The text describes this flurry of raw economic activity. Settlers start farming, they chop wood, they build homes, they set up initial factories. And at this early stage, the author notes, there is absolutely zero government interference.
None at all.
There's no state, no public sector, no red tape. primarily because there is no existing financial basis or tax structure to fund public employment.
The incentive structure here is really critical. The author points out that for these initial settlers, tapping into vast, open-ended resources is infinitely more appealing than seeking a fixed salary or a heavily regulated life.
It's the ultimate manifestation of the libertarian dream.
Exactly. Individuals are out there converting raw nature into capital through their own labor, entirely unbothered by a state apparatus.
But then the conflict arrives. The author illustrates how this perfect system begins to crack, using a scenario with two settlers, Mehmet and Ahmet.
Ah, yes, the classic property dispute.
Right. So Mehmet goes out into the wilderness and claims a highly fertile piece of land. Ahmet sees this land, decides he wants it, and uses physical force to kick Mehmet off.
Just takes it.
Yeah. And Mehmet doesn't have a police force to call. So he gathers his older brothers, they return, they physically beat up Ahmet, and they retake the land. Predictably, Ahmet's family and friends aren't going to just accept that defeat, so they mobilize and join the feud.
It's the rapid escalation of violence over property rights.
Wait a minute, though. I have to push back on the author's premise here.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't the whole appeal of an untouched infinite frontier that there is an abundance of resources? Like, if Ahmet wants land, why doesn't he just walk a mile down the river and claim his own untouched plot? Why is the author assuming that a violent Hobbesian conflict over a single piece of dirt is absolutely inevitable, even in a land of total abundance?
That is the pivotal question of frontier economics. And the author's underlying logic relies on human nature and the extraction of high-yield capital.
Okay, explain that.
Yes, there is infinite land, but not all land holds equal economic value. Mehmet didn't just find a random acre, he found the most fertile land. Perhaps it's perfectly situated at a river bend for a future factory, or it has the best timber.
Oh, I see.
Right. The moment an individual identifies and improves a high-value resource, it transforms from raw nature into a target. Regardless of how much total space exists, human beings will inevitably clash over the highest-yielding assets. The author is stating that you cannot introduce hundreds of thousands of profit-seeking individuals into an area without generating thousands of these exact capital disputes from every corner of the territory.
So human nature practically guarantees violent competition over the premium assets. But how does a sprawling brawl over a premium riverbed eventually lead to the invention of the DMV?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author explains that these individual conflicts act as the required catalyst for the state. To prevent thousands of these brawls from utterly destroying the economic potential of the new settlement, the society suddenly demands a unified system of security and validated land deeds.
They need paper.
They need a universally recognized way to declare ownership and an authority to enforce it without requiring a daily fistfight.
But the text notes, they don't immediately draft a constitution or elect a massive parliament, do they? It starts much smaller?
Much smaller and highly organic. The text suggests that these initial needs might be fulfilled by existing social hierarchies. Religious elders might step in to validate agreements.
Or respected families acting as mediators.
Exactly. Or, interestingly, the ship captains who originally brought the settlers over might be drafted to keep the peace and log property claims, utilizing their existing authority.
Ah, so the ship captain isn't just acting as a referee. He essentially becomes the prototype for the Supreme Court.
Yep.
And the reader might look at that and think, well, perfect. We have our property rights secured by a trusted local, no massive taxes, no bloated agencies. The libertarian dream survives. But the author says it absolutely does not stop there. The snowball has started rolling, and it is entirely out of their control.
The author meticulously maps out the inevitable chain reaction. You have security and property tracking established by these informal authorities. But a settled population inherently grows. Families are formed.
Right. Kids are born.
Yes. With an influx of children, the pressing issue of education arises. The exact same groups managing the land deeds and the security now have to figure out how to educate the youth. This requires them to allocate new, dedicated staff specifically for education.
The frontier is shrinking, but the societal appetite is expanding.
Yeah.
I mean, the essay lists out this cascading wave of common needs. You need dedicated places of worship. You need formal burial services to manage sanitation.
You need complex ledger systems for tracking debts between newly established merchants.
And you need physical infrastructure like public wells and connective roads.
And this brings us to the author's most critical reality check. This is the exact pivot point where they argue the libertarian logic structurally collapses. The author states that as time progresses, the amount of discoverable land and easy raw value eventually decreases.
While the needs go up.
Exactly. Simultaneously, the common needs of the expanding population continually, irreversibly increase.
The mechanics of that snowball are fascinating. If you need a ledger to track the merchant debts, you need a clerk to maintain it. If you have a clerk, you need a way to pay them. If you are extracting a fee to pay the clerk, well, you have invented taxes.
You've crossed the Rubicon.
Once you cross that threshold, you are no longer a loose collection of independent pioneers. You are a settled society with towns and cities. And cities require common criminal laws, a unified currency, and businesses that are subject to shared operational rules.
By attempting to run away from the rules and just solve immediate, basic problems, like who owns the farm and who teaches the children, they have accidentally reinvented a comprehensive legal structure.
Which is bureaucracy.
As the author astutely points out, a comprehensive legal structure is, at its core, a bureaucracy. They engineered the very machine they fled.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the author doesn't just present this as a vague philosophical theory. They put a hard, historical expiration date on the frontier dream.
Yeah, the timeline is very specific.
The text acknowledges that libertarians often point to 1600s and 1700s North America as the ultimate reference point for this kind of free, unregulated structure. But the author argues that even if you manage to secure that untouched land, the informal structure has an absolute maximum lifespan of about 100 to 150 years.
The reasoning behind that specific time frame is the sheer weight of compound interaction. Within 4 or 5 generations, that century-and-a-half mark, the population density and the complexity of commerce practically guarantee the formation of a rigid common law.
The informal systems just break down.
Right. The networks of elders and ship captains simply lack the bandwidth to handle the logistical load of a fully developed economy.
But a strict libertarian could counter that argument. They might say, fine, we concede we need a minimal government. We will establish laws, but they will exclusively handle basic security, just cops, courts, and guns to enforce contracts and stop violence. We leave education, health, and infrastructure entirely to the private market.
The author attacks that specific minimal state idea directly. They argue that expecting a society's legal framework to only deal with basic physical security is a profound misunderstanding of what actually sustains human life.
It's too narrow.
Way too narrow. True societal security, according to the text, is not just defined by officials with legal guns patrolling the perimeter.
The author has this brilliant, almost cynical line about the vulnerability of that setup. They argue that in a society built entirely around capital and entrepreneurship, if your only state apparatus is a security force, and you're relying on those officials not using their guns to extort money, you are leaving your freedom up to pure statistical luck.
Because a gun for hire operates on the logic of capital, just like everyone else.
Precisely.
The author's thesis really elevates the definition of stability. They argue that security is a holistic ecosystem. It encompasses the moral and ethical frameworks provided by religious or community teachings. It requires the physical infrastructure dug by laborers to allow the movement of food.
And teachers and doctors.
Exactly. It depends on the knowledge systematically passed down by teachers and the medical treatments provided by doctors to prevent plagues from destabilizing the workforce. All of these interconnected elements must function together to create actual security.
And the warning laid out in the text is incredibly stark here. The author claims that if you intentionally strip away these elements to maintain a minimal state, if you neglect collective education, or public health, or shared infrastructure, it acts as a gravity well, dragging the entire society backward.
It pulls you right back into feudalism.
Yes, feudalism and peasantry.
That leads to the most controversial, aggressive claim in the entire essay, actually. The author suggests that this regression into feudalism is the secret, unspoken utopia of libertarianism.
Wow.
By stripping away the holistic, interconnected support systems of a full society in the name of absolute individual freedom, you inevitably create a vacuum. That vacuum is immediately filled by whoever holds the most resources and the most physical force, resulting in a system of lords and peasants.
It is a massive intellectual gut punch to the premise of a stateless society. The exact people who are trying to build the ultimate free future by escaping the overbearing state might actually just be laying the groundwork for a rapid descent into medieval feudalism.
The secret utopia of absolute freedom is just peasant servitude to the richest warlord.
It entirely reframes the political debate. The author moves the conversation away from a binary government versus no government argument and shifts it to a much more practical question. What are the absolute minimum holistic requirements for a society to prevent itself from collapsing into feudal warlordism?
It's a very different lens to view the state through.
So what does this all mean? Let's synthesize the logic we've unpacked today for you, our listener. We started with a mutual, very human hatred of the waiting room, the taxes, the red tape, and the arrogance of unaccountable bureaucrats.
The everyday miseries.
We then tested the ultimate escape plan, retreating to the completely free Republic of X to live without rules. But following the author's unyielding logic, we discovered the human nature's drive for high-yield capital, the geographical realities of logistics, and the snowballing needs of an expanding population make a comprehensive bureaucracy an absolute mathematical inevitability.
You cannot escape the machine.
You will just end up rebuilding it from scratch.
And it is absolutely crucial to clarify the author's final stance here. Despite everything we've discussed about the necessity of the state, the text makes it very clear that the author is not anti-private sector.
That's an important caveat.
They explicitly state their deep appreciation for free enterprise and private investors, recognizing that a vibrant private sector is a vital component of that holistic ecosystem.
Right, they aren't painting capitalism or business as the villain of the story here.
Exactly the opposite. But they are making the case that the private sector is not a universal cure-all that can replace the holistic functions of a society. For the author, the actual root of our current rotting, agonizing bureaucracy isn't the mere existence of the state itself, because we've proven the state is a natural outcome.
So if the machine itself is a natural necessity and capitalism isn't the villain, the author must be pointing the finger squarely at the operators. Are they saying we've essentially put the wrong people behind the wheel?
That is the ultimate conclusion. The real problem, according to the text, lies in the declining quality of humans who are tasked with running these inevitable systems. Furthermore, they critique a societal life that has become purely capital-centered.
Meaning what, exactly?
When a cultural focus is entirely dedicated to capital extraction, and the people managing the natural bureaucracy lack robust education and expansive vision, the administrative system decays. The autoimmune disease takes over, leaving us with the frustrating, arrogant nightmare we experience today.
The machine isn't evil. It is just being driven by petty operators who lack the vision to streamline the logistics they were hired to manage. Which leaves us with a truly provocative final thought for you to chew on.
Oh, this is the big one.
If the text is right, if the ultimate fate of any growing society is to inevitably build a bureaucracy, and the root of our misery is the flawed, arrogant, unvisionary quality of humans running it, is there a completely different escape hatch? If human operators are inevitably prone to petty tyranny and feudal tendencies, is the ultimate libertarian workaround to hand the bureaucratic machine over to artificial intelligence?
A completely objective manager.
Exactly. Can an algorithm manage the natural logistics of a state, balancing the holistic ecosystem of infrastructure and security without the arrogance of a human bureaucrat? Next time you're sitting in that hard plastic chair, clutching ticket 84 and watching the clock tick away, ask yourself, if we can never truly escape the machine, is our best hope to remove the human element entirely?